if you take a look in the bathroom, you'll see there's actually kind of it's a dual aspect, but obviously both windows are frosted, but that's a really nice feature on this house, and I just think that's one of the reasons that it's at this price. So I'm just working on my estate agency, as probably gonna have to get a real job. Only joking. It's Friday morning that I'm filming this because tomorrow I'll be doing a performance, or effectively performance, playing at my cousin's wedding, and it's the first time I've played in front of people since March, I think. I think there's been a few people doing these kind of videos that have started to do a few gigs or whatever. I thought it'd be maybe vaguely interesting to talk about what I'm practicing for it, and then also kind of some tips on nerves and stuff, and how to practice for a thing, and just some general kind of ideas about how to combat things going wrong or whatever. So I guess the first thing to kind of try and reframe the way you're thinking about a performance, instead of thinking about things that could go wrong, I guess, is to try and tell yourself the story, or believe that people are looking for you to do well. Is one of these things that I've been told that's worked in the past. So for instance, if you're going to do a guitar exam or something, or you're going to do a science exam, whatever you're doing, whether it's an exam or just a performance, tell yourself that basically these are opportunities for me to present what I can do, and people are looking to either enjoy what I'm doing or give me marks for what I'm doing, instead of seeing it as like you start with a glass full and you're slowly pouring it out with mistakes or whatever. Think of it as an opportunity to show what you can do, rather than mistakes subtracting from what you're doing. I think that's kind of one way to reframe what could potentially be quite a nerve-wracking or negative way to look at things. The other thing to say is, if it's not a solo performance, I think you can take some of that, some of the ego, I guess it is ego, isn't it? It's that thinking that people are watching you. Actually, if it's not a solo performance and you've got other people around you, potentially you might have 4 other people in the band. Probably you're getting 20% of the attention, if that. If you're a singer, you're probably getting a bit more than everyone else. But try and tell yourself that the focus isn't actually entirely on you. For instance, I'm playing at this wedding and I'm playing a tune solo, but actually the wedding's not even about me anyway. I'm just kind of like wallpaper. It's another way to think about it. People aren't looking for me to make a mistake. They're going to be looking for what else is happening on the day and focusing on the couple that are getting married. So although I can feel pressure and want to do well, actually it's not all about me anyway. Even though I'm going to be the only person performing at that particular point in time, attention is not going to be entirely on me. It's going to be on the families and on the couple that are getting married, basically. I think the problem is potentially some people that are not natural performers like myself. You might start to have these negative feelings like, oh, people are looking for me to make a mistake, or everyone's watching, all these sorts of things, which aren't actually really true. And I think maybe some of that comes from our own kind of hyper awareness of mistakes. For instance, you might watch, I think I've talked about this before in the past, but you might watch like a live video of a guitarist, and I know for myself, sort of part of what I'm doing is looking for that confirmation that they're actually human, so if a bend's out of tune and stuff, for some reason that makes me feel a bit more secure in my own playing or whatever. If something doesn't come off perfectly, it's sort of disconcerting to see someone play something perfectly all the way through, which I think is kind of so weird about miming and that sort of thing. I think it makes I think it adds to sort of negativity, and it adds to that feeling of striving for perfection, and I'm not sure it's particularly positive. So that's, I think, one of the kind of negatives of some of the culture of just miming videos, which exists elsewhere, but not here. Anyway, so it's not all about you, and people are looking for you to play well, or they're looking to enjoy what you're doing anyway. I think that is in the main true, and I think those are two kind of things that can really help. Now, when it comes to actually practicing the thing, I think it's important to not just, when you think of a piece of music, you might think of it in sections. So you might think of like a verse, a chorus, solo, chorus, or whatever the structure is. I think the tendency is to practice chunks of tunes for people that I've met anyway, and potentially you focus less on the transitions. Potentially you focus slightly less on the transitions between things. So what the transition between a verse to a chorus, or the transition from a chorus into a solo, to me are actually some of the bits that will end up being less smooth sounding, potentially because you've practiced that thing less, whereas you might have practiced the whole chunk of verse many times, or the whole chunk of chorus many times, but you've not practiced that transition. So this is something that I found myself, so practicing those bits between sections is definitely valuable, so that's something to consider. When it comes to actually practicing, if you've got, so I'm practicing one specific piece. I'm playing that piece many times a day at the moment, and in many different locations, and sort of trying to get comfortable with it again. So I went and sat in my parents' garden and asked if I could just play this in front of them, so that I've got used to playing it in front of people again. And I'll probably do that again at some stage today. But I think that can help. So if you've got a performance coming up, to me, playing in front of people I don't know is not particularly an issue. Playing in front of friends or family kind of is as difficult, I think, as it gets. So if you can play the thing in front of two people, whether it's parents or friends or something, I think that could really help to take off some of that anxiety around. I guess then it's also important to say that pressure and nerves and all that stuff generally aren't going to make a performance better. So if you've not already got the thing under your fingers in the practice room, I think it's relatively rare that it will come together on stage, which is why it's important to actually practice the thing and focus on, like I said, those little aspects, like those transitions between verses and chorus, how the song starts, how the song ends. Think about things like, this part I want to be like louder and softer, dynamics. These things, and pushing and pulling, timing, how are you and how it feels. If you work on that and focus on those in the practice room, you're kind of increasing your chances to have a good performance on stage, is basically how I think of it. But generally, the things that you can't do with regular accuracy in the practice room, I'm imagining are not going to come out better on stage if you're like me, and nerves and pressure and setting up and all those things are going to be a distraction in some way. So I'm just going to try and do the thing. This is the first thing that I've tried to play this morning, and I guess it'd be good for me to see and hear back how it's sounding at the moment. So recording yourself is also a good idea. On the day I'm going to have a backing track to play to, because basically I've done this arrangement of a tune, and so I'm playing with a backing track, but I've got it on my phone at the moment because that's going to be quieter than what I'm going to be playing to on the day. So hopefully if I can play it successfully to this, or at some level to this on the day, I should be okay. So let's see how this goes. This is my count. that's what I'm going to be doing much more of today, and I'm walking away from the phone and stuff, and putting it like further away so that I can hear less of it and hear more of myself. But that's basically what I'm practicing at the moment. And then, for instance, the bit of the song that I'm struggling with the most at the moment is this. That transition. So I'm going to practice that a bit more. So slow things down is generally the best way to practice, and think about how things are actually supposed to move. And focusing on those little parts and the minutiae of the performance, I think, can help to make sure that your focus is on the right things rather than worrying about other stuff. And then when it comes to on the day, I guess things like coffee, use with care. If you're like me, I know that if I've had like 2 cups of coffee on an empty-ish stomach, or 2 cups of coffee in succession, that quite quickly that can change my nerves and I get jitters and stuff. So that's something I've got to remind myself. So on the way to the thing tomorrow, I'll probably just drink quite a bit of water rather than going crazy with coffee, because I don't want to put myself in a dodgy headspace with loads of coffee. I think generally it'll probably be fine, but it's just an idea, because something you might not think of when you're worried about other things. Practice, and lots of practice, can do things to your hands. So I use this Joshua Tree climbing salve. I think that's how you say it anyway. But it's basically like a thing that climbers use to look after their hands and fingers. I guess climbing's probably a lot more tricky on your hands and fingers than guitar playing, but this I found kind of works to if you were doing lots of practice, because generally a lot of people work to a deadline, so you might practice more towards the deadline. That stuff I think can kind of help to keep your fingers from falling apart, basically. So I think that's useful. Hopefully this has been vaguely interesting. I just wanted to talk about this kind of for me as well, but just to remember that focusing on practicing the transitions and the bits of the song that aren't going quite so well, if there's that one part of the song practicing the whole song over and over again won't particularly help me very much with that section. So yeah, give yourself like a little challenge, like I'm going to play that thing or that part, and you try and play it 5 times cleanly in a row. Focus on little things like that are going to actually improve the overall. If you're going to have to play the thing standing up, you're going to have to try and do that. Try and play the thing with the rig that you're going to use, whether that means going and setting up for a mini gig in your living room or whatever. Try and play it in front of some people whether it's your parents or friends or whatever. But overall, just don't worry about it too much, and try and keep it in mind that you're potentially not the entire focus of whatever's happening. Or if it's an exam, you are, but they're looking to enjoy what you're doing, or they're looking for this to be an opportunity to show what you can do and focus on the good things. That's basically the idea of an exam. It's not an exam which is showing what you can't do, it's an exam to show you what it is that you can do. Similarly, a performance is about music, and generally people that listen to you and are going to attend a gig or whatever it is that you're doing, going to be there to try and enjoy music rather than focusing on little things that didn't go as well as you'd hoped. So hopefully that's vaguely helpful. It's just something that I wanted to talk about, as in the past I've had some kind of issues with nerves and kind of negative thinking around this sort of stuff. So I hope this is vaguely helpful. Leave comments if you've got ways that you deal with nerves and all this sort of stuff. If you do like what I do on the channel, if you could like and subscribe. Or if you got anything out of this video, there's a buy me a coffee link. Obviously gigs are dried up for the moment, so I'm having to drink less coffee. But hopefully this was useful to someone, and if it was, then you could use that link, but only use it if you can really afford to and got something like this. Otherwise, just leave a comment and let me know how you're doing. Cheers.